welcome to another episode of Common Theory, you guys. I am very excited about this episode for everybody. We have some special guests with us today. We have one of the top four participants from the event, Mr. Bobby B. Fine himself, and also join us again. We have good old Ankylosaur, David. I'm very excited to have him back, and of course, guys, thank you, Puzzle. I missed you last episode, my bro. So nice to have you back, dude. So let's take this off. I think we should just start diving in. Let's hit the overview if you guys are good for it.
Yeah,
All
first
right,
things
so
first. Might want to mention that we're talking about the Riches to Rags tournament that just happened in Philadelphia.
yes. Yes, that is the point of what we're doing today. The whole point of what we're doing today is actually we're going to be discussing the top four in depth of the Richest Rags event, and we're going to do some honorable mentions and some things of that nature. But we're really going to delve deep within the top four deck lists and actually discuss like certain choices people made, and really like discuss like how maybe these decks got there and why they're even to begin with and things of that nature. So.
Yeah, the first thing that we can go ahead and mention is that common backgrounds were legal at this event, which they are not typically legal in our format. So there was a couple decks that showed up to this event that are notable. The main one, as Bobby might tell you, being Abdel with Candlekeep Sage as the background.
Yes. So let me hit on that as well. There were 36 players in the event total, and they allowed those backgrounds as well. Only two total showed up to the entire event, if I'm not mistaken, and they were both Candlekeep Sage.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting, leading up to the event, lots of people were, talking about the Abdel Candlekeep Boogeyman, and like, oh, it's going to be everywhere. Oh, it's going to be impossible to beat all this, hyping it up. And then two copies showed up. I mean, it was pretty good, don't get me wrong. But, only two copies showed up. I was kind of surprised there weren't, like Wilson Flaming Fist or someone trying to do persist stuff with, Master Chef. But yeah, just no one took advantage of the kind of one time you can play common backgrounds.
Yeah, I expected to see a lot of it just because it was the first major event to have them legal. But the other topic, as for things that might be affecting this meta, we have to talk about the Orzhov bounty that was placed during this event.
I found that to be really interesting. So I don't. What was the? Do you know what the prize was specifically for that, Bobby?
Yeah, so someone local to that community, I don't remember names or anything, but they put up $50 as like a bounty to whoever played an Orzhov deck to the best finish. So I think that ended up going to 10th place, if I recall. But yeah, so definitely there are a lot more Orzhov lists that popped up than probably you would normally expect.
Yeah, I find that to be very interesting because that bounty really pushed a lot of people in that like control style environment, right? Because there was a lot of I believe Grant was the individual for 10th place, and they were on a Abdel agent deck. But then we had a lot of was it Ellis Ilcor, I believe? A lot of those.
Core, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I found that to be very interesting. Just overall, it's just like, wow, that's just Orzhov. Like, I wish I could have spoken to that person and been like, why Orzhov specifically?
My favorite part about it was that the Viscopa Guildmage, which is top for the most recent two in-person events, was nowhere to be found despite the Orzhov bounty. Like, I would have put money on that being one of the more common decks, and it was just non-existent.
Yeah, that was a kind of a strange one. Actually, me and David went in depth about, going over, past events and things like that. And if you're going to be in this event, you would have looked at past tournaments and see if you're going Orzhov, why would you not play a deck that won a tournament, right? Or at least like take it and modify it to your liking and go from there.
Well, Ankylosaur did win the first Riches to Rags event, so it did win a tournament a while ago, and it was in the same. It was the same event, so the same area, the same people. I'm sure. So some of that notoriety in the area, I assume.
Yep, I could see it. But with that, David, you got any thoughts on that stuff, or you want if we could take it away and go to our honorable mentions?
Yeah, no, I just think that it's funny what it does to the meta when you like put out a cash prize to a certain color. Like it'd be cool. Like what would happen if they were like the best deck gets $50 next time? Like what? Who's gonna show up with Aranis Urchin or any of the other many well-performing rule decks in the format? Yeah, I just think that it's an interesting like pressure on the tournament that you've got extra cash just like flowing in if you happen to choose a deck and wind up spiking a tournament. So
yep, I agree. But let's move on with that. And Puzzle, I mean, let's take us away. So you guys, Puzzle's going to hit us with the honorable mentions, which is 5th through 10th place in the tournament. So these are 6 points, correct? So they at least had 2 wins.
Yep. So they had 2 wins or a win and a bye, however it worked out. There are some people in the top 10 with just 1 win and 1 bye, but that's just kind of how it worked out at this event. So, in 10th place, we have Hiccupy with Abdel, Adrian, and Agent of the Iron Throne. This is just a really hardcore kind of a control deck, an Orzhov control deck. We're on a couple notable cards that stood out to me to spice this list up a bit. Were Doomblade, destroying non-black creatures, and we're also on Shelter, which is just a solid protection piece that draws a card. It's not bad, just not necessarily standard, so just a couple cards that I thought I would point out there. We're also on 35 lands, 8 mana rocks, Ashnod's Altar, and the plane cycling creature. So we should never be looking too shabby on our mana. The average CMC is 2.4. And yeah, we're playing a lot of the mass discard creatures and board wipes. And it looks like the main win condition for this deck is Mirkwood Bats. And we're not playing the new Nadir Nightblade. So...
And no Falcon Wrath.
No Falcon Wrath. Noble, yeah.
There is the Malachar Blood Priest in the deck, which if you start looping that, you can drain.
I mean, so. Yeah, there's the drain loop stuff, all that jazz. Initiative as well, but yeah, just and the Biblioplex Assistant for potential combo lines if it comes to that, but. Anyone else have anything to bring up on this one?
Not too much. It does have actually a bunch of different infinites in it. It has the standard Oblivion Ring Journey to Nowhere infinites as well. And also 2 Omen of the Dead could loop if you do have 5 rocks. So you can loop with that and a what is it? One of the sacrifice creatures, for instance, Chain Devil or one of those. So you could just sacrifice your Abdel, get the triggers, bring it back to your hand, cast it indefinitely, and continue, so on and so forth. But
that's cute. I like
not
that.
too much. Yeah, there's also actually, I did not see this before. There's Faithless Butcher in the deck, so you can also do certain things with Faithless Butcher as well. So
Alrighty. We'll go ahead and move on to 9th place then. We've got Memory Lapis on Dargo Kedis. The
Uh-oh.
massive aggro deck that took down the last Sanctuary event. A couple spicy cards in this version specifically. We have Accelerate, which is 2 mana to give your Dargo haste and draw a card. And we also have Wedding Invitation, which is a 2 mana artifact that draws a card and can help us get damage through potentially if someone only has 1 blocker.
It gets you through any number of blockers, so it's the Dargo can't be blocked.
No, it's target creature can't be blocked, right? I was thinking it was Renegade. Whatever that card's called. But yeah, it's the other way around. Our average mana value is 1.29, so we're sitting pretty low on our mana value there. You'd love to see that. And we've got 31 lands and about 5-ish mana rocks. And, Dargo, who has his own built-in ramp. And yeah, it's just mono red aggro.
I mean, I don't have much to say about this. Pretty stock list, right? Blitz you, get him dead, right? Like, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it looks like Dargo Kedis. It smells like Dargo Kedis, and it attacks like Dargo Kedis. So it's probably Dargo Kedis.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're also on a few of the pingers.
Yeah, I do like the Wedding Invitation. That's a nice one.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because it replaces itself, but you kind of get to choose between sacrificing it to help pay for Dargo on a later turn or using it after Dargo's in play. So it's an interesting one. It seems a little awkward to me, but maybe it plays a lot better than I'm reading it.
Well, this list specifically has actually both styles of graveyard hate, which may say that that meta over there. So for instance, it has Relic and it has Jack-o'-lantern. So it's playing both the artifact spells to specifically hate on graveyards there. So,
which makes sense. I mean, last time there was a lot more Flicker, and there were a bunch of Tadiovas floating around last time, and
weren't there a couple
decks,
Cormellas too, or at least one?
Cormella.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So.
I mean, this player did well. Can't complain. 2 wins. It's a good deck. I mean, it's Dargo Kedis. What more can you ask for? Blitz him.
It gets there. Alrighty. Next up, we have a deck that I know is close to mine and Bobby's hearts. We've got Malcolm Breach's Curiosity Control coming in 8th place here.
One of my favorites. One of your favorites.
Yeah, piloted by Dr. Wigginson. So, some spicy inclusions in this version. I saw Harvest Pyre is in here. Treasure Cruise as removal, kind of. It's an interesting one. And we are also on Step Through, which we are using to search for the changeling cards like Wings and Blades of Velis Veil and Amoeboid Changeling, so that we can get our pirate combos online. And I thought that was definitely a spicy inclusion. The average CMC of this list is also very low for a control deck. We're sitting at 1.46. And yeah, this is Curiosity Control, 33 lands, about 7 mana rocks. The list looks pretty solid to me.
Yeah, no, this was Joe, who I talked to, and we've all talked to plenty. I mean, this deck, this deck was already plenty good before any recent changes and sets. But Gutter Snipe just like pushed this deck that much further and like just a busted direction. Like Gutter, like I played against specifically listless round 2, and the deck just did nothing. And then like turn 7 or 8, it cast Gutter Snipe and just almost killed everyone just from chaining some spells and not like just sitting and doing nothing the whole game. So deck is very strong. I mean, I love it. Who doesn't love drawing cards and pinging people to death? So
Let me actually ask you guys about this, because if you guys don't know this, you need to know this by now. I've said it a few times on here. This is Puzzle's favorite thing, guys. Curiosity control is his favorite. If you don't know this, learn it, know it. It's his favorite. Do you deny it, Puzzle? Do you
Not at
deny
all.
it?
I love some curiosity.
So, I gotta ask, and specifically, not to disregard you, David, but I know Bobby had his list on the database at one point, and I know they've spoken quite a bit about it. I have to ask you guys specifically. This deck is very geared towards from what I see, a very specific meta. And I'm saying that on the inclusions of cards like Spell Pierce, Pyroblast, Red Blast, Peak, Daze. Like, these cards are just like lowering the curve of this deck to really prevent like an early combo win to really try to get to that long game, right? That's kind of what I'm perceiving when I see this list. Is that kind of like, am I kind of on the ball with that, or not really, or?
So I guess I'll chime in real quick. I'll say sort of. The other reason like this is playing lots of cheap stuff. When you're doing the curiosity game plan, and as opposed to infinite combo with Reckless Fireweaver or Artillerist, you need to be able to keep chaining spells to keep going and keep actively killing everyone. So this like anything over like 2 CMC, you start to get in. Hey, I'm not real interested in this because you're not going mana positive. 1 is definitely better than 2, but some spells are just too good at 2. So that's being able to chain spell after spell after spell is part of why the average CMC is so low in the deck.
Got it.
Yeah, and also they are on step through, and basically all of the changeling spells that turn creatures into changelings. So they are fairly focused on finding that combo and ending the game faster. Also, the only piece of Grave Hate they're on is Honored Heirloom. So, yeah, I don't think they want to go into the long game as much. Although it is still a control deck, and they very much can go into the long game. This one's looking a bit faster than at least my variant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Lorien Revealed did a lot for this archetype, personally.
I had a question that is in the list for the people that are much more experienced with this deck than I am. So not in the list is Tavern Brawler, and in the list is Sigil of Sleep. Give me some thoughts on either of those cards. I've seen, looking at some of the other Malcolm Kedis lists going around, I've seen some of those. Some people are playing Tavern Brawler for the extra card advantage. This one is not. And then Sigil of Sleep feels kind of spicy to me. I'm not sure how common that is.
Personally, I think if you're playing Curiosity Control, you should be playing Sigil of Sleep. That card is insane. As for Tavern Brawler, that one's fairly contentious in the Malcolm X Red decks, because it makes people want to remove Malcolm even more, and Malcolm's already kind of a lightning bolt, so some people don't play it because they don't want to put more of a target on Malcolm. Personally, I still think it's strong enough to warrant inclusion, but you don't have to. So that one's more questionable, but I like Tavern Brawler. It's tough to find slots for sometimes.
The other thing is, at least with like the Breaches version as opposed to Kedis, the Breaches leans a little more into the control game plan, and that involves playing, more counter spells or removal and hitting those on a tavern brawler, and it, like not having a good time to cast them feels kind of bad, especially if you're talking about a combo piece. Like losing access to one of those can feel real bad. It's minimal impact when you talk, the deck as a whole, but it's not zero. So there is something to be said for that.
Yeah, you touched upon exactly what I was going to say, Bobby. So like you hit it right on the nose. I've experienced that specifically with Malcolm and Kedis. So
Yeah, that's not something I ever personally worry about, playing those kinds of cards or impulse draw effects in general. But I understand people's worries about that.
but I mean, let's move on to the next deck if
Yeah.
we're good with that.
Next up,
Absolutely.
we've got Stein's Zada deck. There's been debates as to what archetype to call it, so we'll call it combo. Yeah, this is Stein's kind of the main pilot for the deck in the first place, so there's not anything super out there. But if you like playing combat tricks in your deck and making them really, really powerful, Zada's very good at doing that. And we're on 28 lands, which is probably the lowest at this event, and just a very low land count for our format in general. But we are on about 13 pieces of ramp, and our average CMC is 1.33. So we have the very low mana values, and we're trying to keep it low to the ground, put a bunch of tokens into play, cast our Zada, and just end the game immediately.
Yeah. I mean, there really isn't much to say about this deck, right? Like, it's all the rituals, all the, all of it. I mean, let's be realistic. It's like literally Seething Song. Like, you name it, battle him. The rituals are here. Why do you need lands? You
We
need
got
gas
mana
to beat your
geyser.
opponents. Yeah, I mean, it's all in the tank, right? Like, just send it. Get them dead, right? Just end the game. This is a deck that isn't there to stop people from winning. This is a deck that's winning the game. You need to stop it from beating you. So, I mean, good. Zada. What else you got to say about it, right?
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this deck it gets a few new goodies from Wild's Veil Drain. That'll be interesting to see how they get if they get played. But yeah, the deck is fast.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Keeping it nice and simple on that one. Next up, we've got 6th place. We've got Chum Guzzler 666 on Gretchen. This is actually a person that I have had a couple of coaching sessions with, so it was nice to see them top this event. Not top 4, but did well.
But are you saying that you have an active Patreon now? Is that what you're saying?
I am. You know what? You should go ahead and segue into that now.
Long story short, guys, our Patreon's up. It's going. Hey, it's up. Speaks for itself, guys. We have coaching sessions. We have all the above. This is just like Puzzle just said, right? He's been working with this said individual, and he topped this recent event. And let's throw the full 2 cents out there. They missed round 1. Oh, and they still got there. They still got there missing round 1. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, delve back into the deck, my man.
But yeah, this is a few cards different. I think it's about 7 cards different from my list. Probably a few cards different from Bobby's list. One notable thing was there were a couple of card choices expecting a lot of aggro decks to show up at this event. So instead of Gift of Paradise, we're playing New Horizons. So instead of gaining 3 life, It's an untagged one. Instead of gaining 3 life, we're choosing to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature to turn Gretchen into a better blocker. And we're also playing Tangle, which is a fog that taps down creatures for a turn, which is a very spicy inclusion. We're on 33 lands, but all of our combo pieces are ramp pieces, so we're on 33 lands, but we're also on 32 pieces of ramp. Our average CMC is 1.59, which is actually a little high compared to most of these other decks, surprisingly. And yeah, it's a Simic combo.
I mean, am I in the room here with royalty with all you guys? Like the three of you? Like you guys either have won with this deck or topped an event with this deck. So like this deck's busted, right? Like, can the three of you agree with me? This deck is busted, right? You need to know how to beat this deck. Am I crazy now,
Gretchen's
or
squad
what?
is here.
Yeah, if it's not
Like-
broke, don't fix it. So it's
Yeah.
it's still good, still busted. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty normal. I know talking to him, he was the person who played this one. They were definitely worried about aggro. They talked about Spore Frog at one point. So yeah, aggro is definitely on his mind.
I mean, what do you think, David? You like it? I mean, it's you just topped
like-
the most
I
recent
like
event with
the,
it prior.
Yeah, for sure. That was the first big event that I had played Gretchen at, and no, I'm a believer. I love the Tangle. If you're afraid of aggro, I like the Seal of Removal as well. That's a card I've talked with Bobby about, trying to find a place for that in my version of the deck, which is basically Bobby's version of the deck. Yeah, I like the little tweaks to this version for sure.
Yeah, solid stuff. Alrighty, let's go ahead and take it to the last deck before top 4. We've got Rev Liberty on Rasad and Feywild Visitor. So this is, I'd classify it as an aggro deck, I suppose. We're playing a lot of creatures that are cheap with big butts. We've got our 1 mana 05s, our 1 mana 04s, our 1 mana 03s, all that fun stuff. We're just trying to get them down, get down our commander, and punch people for some big damage. Maybe do some initiative stuff so that we can get double big damage. Yeah, pretty simple game plan. As for some spicy cards that I saw, we've got Bar the Door and Solidarity, which are probably pretty standard for this deck, but some fun cards if you want to just play massive toughness combat tricks, I guess, if you want to call them that. As long as your commander's in play, 4 mana, give your board +5/+5 sounds pretty decent.
There's like trumpet blasts on steroids.
Maybe a
basically.
+10/+10 if you have the initiative, One notable thing is that we're on 36 lands, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I did not see a single piece of ramp in this deck. So we're on 36 lands, and we're just looking to curve out. We don't need to ramp. We've got a low curve. Our curve is 1.3 for our average CMC. We're just trying to go 1-drop, 2-drop, or sod. Maybe cast initiative on turn 4 or 5. Start getting that in, and punch people.
Definitely. Yeah, I love a Sky Shaper. That's a card I don't see very often, but that is a sweet one. That is a sweet old card.
Yeah, I didn't get the chance to see this deck in action, but I heard stories of it over the weekend or like instances of it. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I can, if I were to sit down round 1 and just like see a Yoke Docs cast turn 1, I wouldn't know how to feel. But I mean, Yeah, I mean all the creatures are hard to kill. So like then when they're also attacking you for a billion. I mean, Rasad seems kind of sweet. I haven't seen it played much. Curious to see kind of how that or if that changes moving forward.
Yeah, Dallas had mentioned in the chat for the event that Dallas and this individual, Rev Liberty, had been working on the deck for a little bit. And I'll be honest, this is kind of a deck I was pulling for. I just, 0-4 beatdown. I love it. I love this sort of thing. Very dependent on the commander sticking around. I did watch one of their camera matches where Rasad got killed earlier, and that was. I've always been a fan of these goofy like toughness matters decks. Decks where you get to play the big toughness pump spells that are usually undercosted for what the effect is, if assuming that gets applied to power as well. Like the Solidarity giving +10/+10. It's like the biggest overrun in the format. There's nothing like that card, and I don't know if it got cut out before, but I did mention that it is a deck that is very dependent on Rasad being in play. If something happens to Rasad, then you've just kind of you've got to get him back. You've got to get him back in play, or you're not going to get there with your thriving turn.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to Finn the Fangbearer in that way. Just very reliant on the commander for the creatures to actually do anything. But yeah, if we want to go ahead and move into our top 4 decks, Bobby, you want to talk about your list?
I suppose I could do that.
Let's just give the little caveat for everybody so they know. We kind of delved a little bit brief on those decks 5th through 10th place. There, we're actually going to go pretty heavily in these top 4 decks, you guys. So it's going to be a little bit longer of an episode, but we're going to be talking here, especially because we have Bobby here specifically, and he was there in person speaking to these individuals, and he's part of the top 4. So it's really nice to have him here, speak to him, and he played the last round, so he could tell us about the table talk maybe, or just the whole how everything went down getting to the top and whatnot. And it's going to be really great to hear his thoughts on these different deck lists. And what I think is very exciting is that each one of us are kind of going to go a little bit more in depth on kind of like our respected decks that we know a little bit more about than the others and things of that nature. So it's going to be really exciting. So, but with that little tidbit, Bobby, please take us away with your deck.
Yeah. So unlike most of the people, I did want to take advantage of the common background thing while I could. And I played what everyone was talking about would be the Boogeyman, which was Abdel, Adrian, plus Candlekeep Sage. So it's the same, Gator, I'm sure you've talked plenty about Abdel. I don't want to, there's not too much that's different about this. I mean, there's not too much that's different, but there's also everything is different, right? Like it's still doing the flicker plan. It's still doing all that fun stuff, going infinite. But you get to cut a lot of like the more underwhelming cards that you have to play in Sorko Sailor, like some of the cantrippy stuff, because you just have a sweet cantrip every time your commander TBs or LTBs in your command zone. By getting access to Candlekeep Sage, you get a few more Archaeomancer effects, or your Archaeomancer effects are a little better. Biblioplex Assistant noted, for example, you're always going to draw that card if you're flickering Abdel, so you don't have to worry about having an Inspiring Overseer or some other creature to draw that card for you. Same with Meldweb Curator. There's a handful of others you could play to do the same thing, but those two specifically just because they're 4 mana, and so they're on par with Archaeomancer and Repository Scab. But yeah, no, the deck was really sweet. I know Gator and I talked plenty about the deck beforehand. I started with a list he had made and made some tweaks over time just to suit what I liked. And yeah, I mean, the deck performed great, I thought. I mean, obviously, didn't end up pulling out the win, but I tried, so Yeah, the deck was good. In terms of any like I don't know things I added that I thought were maybe on the spicier side. Not that I would say anything in here is particularly spicy, but I added aviary mechanic as another way just to enable kind of the journey to nowhere O-ring loops in a way that you didn't need both. Also, with sometimes you just have a bajillion mana rocks and you can just aviary mechanic Abdel back to your hand and combo off that way. So that was our card I got to use to some effect, and just rebuying like a Dawnbringer cleric sometimes earlier in the game can do some work too. Really, I cut one noted difference is that I cut all the 3 mana flickers that just flicker one thing, like scroll, shift, blur, acrobatic maneuver. The reason being, with Candlekeep Sage, all of your flickers already turn into those. So why not just focus on the 2 mana ones? I also played Sunscape Familiar, so making sure I'm playing all the blue 2-drops to make going infinite a little easier, not needing as many rocks or mana sources. Snap kind of serving that same role where it's a combo piece if I need it, or it's also removal in a pinch too.
Yep. It all makes sense. Like, I don't really have much to say about this deck. I mean, this deck has been variants of this deck have been proven. One note I would like to kind of put out there for people to hear. I personally think this deck is much stronger than the variant that I've played quite a bit and won the first Sanctuary event with. This deck is much more terrifying in my opinion. Do you have any thoughts on that, Bobby? Like, do you think this deck is a little better or just kind of on par with that one, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've played a little bit of both. I after your Sanctuary run, I played your list from that. Almost if not card for card. This one's definitely. So I'll be the first to admit, I was like, there's no way. I mean, Candlekeep's good, but there's no way it's like that much better. Everyone's like freaking out and overreacting. But it is a lot better than the Sword Coast Sailor version. Just being able to like streamline and not have to worry about finding a cantrip, guy along the way, or you just get to play like you just get to focus on redundancy. You get to focus on just like, how do I get this done the fastest? You max out on all the 2 mana rocks. You just get to jam Abdel, and if Abdel gets removed when it's just sitting there, you get to draw cards and just do the same thing again. Like, there are multiple instances during the tournament where I would have an Abdel just chilling in play with some stuff under it, and people would go to remove it, and it's like, cool, yeah, I'll draw a card and get all my permanents back so I can do the same thing next turn. Like, I would there was one specific instance where I fought over one and lost, and I was like, I mean, really, I just got a bunch of stuff out so I can make sure Abdel resolves again next turn. So yeah, no, like the Candlekeep makes it so removing Abdel once it's in play doesn't feel nearly as bad as it would otherwise. So
Yeah, you guys got any thoughts on it?
I mean, yeah, I think just being able to play better cards in your 99 or 98 in this case, is always going to be very nice. I think Candlekeep Sage is busted, especially in Abdel. And yeah, like you guys were saying, value Abdel just gets so much better. And I know Chris casts Abdel for value a decent bit in Abdel Sword Coast Sailor. So just having all of your flicker spells now just draw 2 cards for free, bare minimum, is just insane. So yeah, I think the ceiling on this deck jumps significantly with Candlekeep Sage, and I think the floor is raised a good bit as well.
Yeah. What do you think about this, David? What are your thoughts on Abdel?
Yeah, no, Puzzle said it. Like, being able to tack on a divination to each one of your flicker spells, which are already like one of the best things that you're doing in the deck anyways, is flickering Abdel. Like, that's what it's that's what you're here for. getting a free 2 cards out of that every time you do it, which lets you rip through the deck to find the pieces you need to go infinite in the variety of ways that Abdel goes infinite. It's just it seems, if not the best deck in the format, and it's legal, very close to the top for sure.
Yeah, I've actually said those exact words. If this was actually legal, in my opinion, it would be the best deck in the format. So notably, so I do currently play Standard Bearer in my version, but in this variant, Standard Bearer is, if you resolve this and then you play Abdel, like, how do you lose the game? Right? It's just like, you got to target this, guys. I'm gonna do my thing. Take care of this first. Oh, I'll blink it in response. Now you got to target it again, and it's just like the most miserable card to play against with a deck like this. And it's just like they were saying, Bobby and Puzzle. You don't have to play these quote unquote bad cards. Like, you're not sitting here with the Spirited Companion. You get Sunscape Familiar, right? You're not sitting here with this Angelic Overseer. You get Cloud of Fairies. So you just get more mana rocks, more redundancy, and this deck is busted. Like, I don't want to play against this deck.
It's a lot easier to like stumble into a win than with Sword Coast Sailor, because you can just like end a turn flicker for some value, then all of a sudden you drew a bunch and you're like, oh yeah, I guess I'm gonna keep doing this and win. So
yeah.
It's like the new card from Wilds of Eldraine. It's Quick Study, but it also only costs 1 mana, and it makes you like 8 soldiers.
Yeah.
And rebuys a bunch of ETBs that are awesome.
Exactly, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot to say about this deck, but there's so much to say about this deck, right? I mean, it's just it's disgusting. This deck is insane. Like, the fact that you're cutting 3 mana flicker spells for 2 mana flicker spells that don't draw you a card should kind of already say like how just busted this deck is, right? And you still get to play some of the best cards we have available in the format, like Prismatic Strands, right? Like, cards are insane. So.
Yeah, the free card draw definitely makes finding those matchup tech-specific cards a lot easier too, which is definitely nice.
Which is also good because the deck doesn't run lots in the way of like interaction. And if I had to pick like one thing to like complain about the deck, not that there's much, the lack of interaction with other people's stuff leads to some really awkward situations. I know there was a round that was on camera where there's a Suture Priest and a Bloodseeker in play, and I was just like, cool, this is fun. I don't get to do anything unless they're okay with me doing the thing, which when they're an opponent is not a good spot to be in. So I don't know how that gets resolved in the future. I mean, regular, Sword Coast Sailor Abdel or other Abdel variants are gonna have to think about that too. But that was like the one thing that came up where I was like, man, I wish I had some more ways to handle that. So, but it's gonna be tough finding space for those two. So,
yep. Well, with that, guys, do you guys want to move on to the next deck?
Next up, we've got Rilsa Rail by Buddyfish in 3rd place. This is a Dimir commander that has been very popular in both casual and competitive for a while now. So this list is focused on playing cheap evasive creatures, but not necessarily unblockable creatures. So we're playing creatures like Cloudfin Raptor and where is it at? Jace's Phantasm. So instead of opting for just 1 mana 1/1 unblockables, we're playing some 1 mana flyers that have more potential upside, like Jace's Phantasm becoming a 5/5 and Cloudfin Raptor getting larger as the game goes on, instead of just playing 1/1s that will always be 1/1s. And we're playing a lot of mass ETB discard creatures like Burglar Rat And the reason that we're playing all these creatures, not only because our commander helps disincentivize blocking, but we're also playing a bunch of ninjas. Um, I really enjoy ninjas. I've tried to make ninjas work a couple times in this format. They've always felt so slow to me whenever I try to build it, but I'd be interested to see how this deck pilots, and it must have done well enough because it's in top 4. And we're also playing a lot of other mass discard cards, not just the ETB creatures. Like, we're playing Unnerve and Mind Rake and Delirium Skeins, which is
That's
definitely
a good one.
it's a card. It hits you and you have to play it, so it's a -4 for you and -3 for everyone else. I'm not a big fan of this one personally, but they did decide to play it. And what else do we have? We have the Impetus cycle getting played in this deck as well. Psychic Impetus and Parasitic Impetus. So we are goading Dargos all day and getting value off of them attacking other people. We're playing Fall from Favor as well, since we're already playing these evasive creatures and we want to be getting in for combat damage. Why not have every possible card that brings in the Monarch that's playable? And yeah, Viridian Longbow, so we can ping stuff after we turn our creatures into Death Touchers with our commander. One notable thing is that we're only on 32 lands and about 3 pieces of ramp that I saw, but our curve is a little high with 1.86 on average CMC and a 5-mana commander. And also having to pay ninjutsu costs and then recast our creatures. The land count and ramp package looked a little small to me. But those are the things that I'm going to call out. But yeah, I really like the idea. I think it's definitely an interesting way to take the deck. I love ninjas. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one note I've seen, I think we've all seen various builds of this list ranging from, hyper aggressive to more controlling. This was definitely on like the slower, more controlling side from my experience playing against it. I will say, just from a personal thing, like the discard, it's interesting. How it impacts the game. I think the more aggressive builds get to capitalize on it more than this version does, which, granted, I didn't see the deck as much, I didn't play it. I don't know. So I'm curious, how this person thought about the discard after the tournament and how, that may or may not change. But, Unnerve, Mind Rake, Siphon Mine, Tasker's Cruelty, like hands get shredded to pieces very quickly when you're playing all those cards. So, and I was definitely on the receiving end of that one round, and it was not a fun experience going into top deck mode the rest of the game. So, yeah, the mass discard was an interesting element for sure.
I agree with that. Like the mass discard is a very strange aspect in my opinion. So I love it for the record. I'm a big fan of it. But I did actually get to watch one of the games that this individual did play on stream against TPI. And what ended up happening was they were able to keep the board, or not the board, the hands empty. But then TPI does what TPI does, right? It's just like, oh, look, draw a bunch of cards with all my tokens. Draw more cards. Draw more cards. Oh, no one has cards in hand anymore? I have this many. So it got into a very awkward board state. And it was just kind of like, oof, this is rough. How does TPI not win this match? Which TPI did win that match. But it was just a very interesting thing to me because overall, I'm a big fan of the hand destruction. And I want to see it kind of get pushed and pushed in the direction of seeing play and continue to see how it develops in the format as a whole.
Yeah, I wonder how typical that's going to be. Playing, going into a pod, you're always in the dark, but sometimes you'll be up against a deck like TPI that can draw out of, just wind up with 5-6 cards in hand after getting their hand shredded. Sometimes you'll play against a Gretchen, which can at any point top deck Freed from the Real and win the game, and nobody will have any interaction because their hands have been nuked.
Yep.
I wonder how frequent the making everybody discard and taking away everybody's resources is going to wind up being a liability for the player casting those spells.
That's when I've played those effects in the past. That's how I felt. That's why I don't play many of those anymore, because it happened in that game. That Chris, you mentioned the game against CPI. I was in there, and I believe Garna was the other deck. So yeah, like Garna and I were just hellbent the rest of the game. TPI just kept chaining off a bunch of spells, and it felt unwinnable for everyone, including the real Surreal player. So yeah, it's a weird balance of, hey, I'm gonna like shred everyone's hands, but you also, like, this version just wasn't aggressive enough, I felt, to capitalize on that and to like, okay, I shred their hands, now I gotta like kill them and attack them and put them in a weird spot with their other onboard resources. But yeah, no, I do think those cards are interesting. I just don't know what deck they fit best in yet, personally.
Well, something I've seen, not to go too far off on a tangent, right, is a deck, just like you said, needs to capitalize on that dynamic, right? So a deck that I've seen that's been successful with these same, like this, literally the same cards, like these burglar rat style effects, right, has been Abdel, Agent of the Iron Throne. I've seen that deck actually shred people's hands, and then it starts blinking these creatures and doing exactly what you're saying. So one of the ways that I've noticed this, and maybe I'm wrong with this statement, but it's, you kind of become responsible to stop the table from winning, in a sense, right? So similar to what David just said, right? Oh, I top deck Freed from the Real, I win the game. No one has a hand but you, right? So you kind of gain that responsibility to stop those players from winning off the top of their deck, which I think has become more common with the format continuing to power up, I believe is the right word. The decks are stronger and stronger and stronger. So this top deck capability of winning the game is actually more true now. Like it's more relevant for us to see and experience now, which before was just like, oh, you top deck, I'm playing 38 lands. These decks aren't playing 38 lands. Like even like Zada, for example, that was on 28 lands. Like Dargo Kedis, 31 lands, right? A lot of these decks, I mean, this deck itself, what, 32 lands? Like, we're drawing gas off the top, and we need to be, what is the word I'm looking for? Understanding the fact that we need to know that they're going to draw gas. Like, the lands are cut in the deck, we're top decking live here, and we need to know anything they draw the bolt off the top, right? We're dead. So
one thing specifically about Abdel and playing these discard effects, one very notable thing for Abdel specifically is that Abdel is able to turn these effects from sorcery speed to instant speed. If you're able to get these under Abdel and just flicker Abdel, which means during the draw phase, you can just, at the end of draw phase, flicker Abdel, rip that card out of their hand, and unless it's an instant, they're not going to be able to do anything with it. And Abdel's able to do that repeatedly if they have a game state set up where they can loop flickers. So Abdel really takes advantage of this and has the card advantage to really take on the responsibility of being the only player with cards in hand and the capability to end games quickly. So I think that's definitely an interesting point of discussion.
Yep.
But yeah, do we want to move on to second place?
Oh yes, I think this is going to be close to David's heart here.
Yeah.
You want to take us away with this one?
Yeah, so second place is Banhart playing Satyr Enchanter, which is a deck I am quite fond of. I don't know, I was super glad to see it show up in the top 4. And with a 2-1-1 record. They were off to a little bit of a rocky start. They drew round 1 and then lost round 2 to Bobby, but rattled off 2 wins in round 3 and 4 and got themselves into the finals and as the second seed. So
that round 2, just to chime in, Satyr almost won. Was on the brink of winning. It was like 1 mana away from winning. So Satyr Enchanter showed me new life when I saw this list in action. So
yeah, it's a deck that feels a little bit underrepresented to me in tournament play, considering its strengths, which include making a ton of mana off your land auras. You draw a card for basically every spell in your deck when you have your commander out, so you always have something to do with that mana that you're making. And then you get to play big buff auras like All That Glitters or Ethereal Armor to close out the game really quickly, either on an invasive creature or with commander damage. I will note that Banhart was not playing Ancestral Mask, which I'm not sure if that was just a card that they missed while they were building, or a choice that they made to not run it specifically. But Ancestral Mask is another one of those All That Glitters style effects that can turn a creature from, a 1/1 Fang of Shigeki into just the biggest thing on the board by quite a large margin. Yeah. Satyr does have some weaknesses against some combo decks, especially flicker decks, because your removal is all sorcery speed and aura based. I think that it makes up for this by being really solid against aggressive strategies, as it has a lot of life gain auras, which again combined with the All That Glitters effects means you're gaining huge chunks of life to help you win races at the table. Banhart's version also runs the Pauper Splitter Twin combo of Midnight Guard and Presence of God, which can make basically you put Presence of God on the Midnight Guard, tap it to make an Elf Warrior, which will untap the Midnight Guard due to Midnight Guard's ability, tap it again, make another one, and go infinite that way. Once you untap with them, hopefully that happens, but you can kill the whole table that way really quickly. And there are 3 different creatures in the deck that can tutor up an aura. Either to grab the Presence of God if you have the Midnight Guard, or one of the big heavy hitter auras, or an Armadillo Cloak if you need lifelink, something like that. And running 56 enchantments, including some of the enchantment creatures, which nearly every card that you see is going to draw off your ripping through the deck, helping you find pieces that you need. I also appreciated that a lot of the cards that they were running were very cheap to cast, so you can double, triple, quadruple spell in a turn. 23 of those cards cost 1 mana, and 24 cost 2. So the average mana value of the deck is 1.41, and there were some deep cuts in that list as well. Alms is a card I haven't seen in like 25 years. There's the green pacifism in Utopia Vow. Not a card I see in the wild very often, but definitely a cool list. Lots of different card choices than that I'm playing in mine and that I've seen in some other versions of Satyr.
Yeah, I like you mentioned, I had the pleasure of playing into this round 2, and it was terrifying. Satyr just got left unchecked, and there were and All That Glitter showed up, and Ethereal Armor showed up. Like a Fang of Shigeki was just like suited up with a bunch of random other stuff. So it turned into one shot the Malcolm Dargo player, one shot the Malcolm Bridges player, and it was like a decision between the Malcolm Bridges player and me, and he had like Cho Mano's blessing and benevolent blessing to try to interact with me,
Yeah.
and I like I said, it was one man away from getting there. One thing you mentioned the lack of ancestral mask. I also was surprised to see it not running Aura Gnarlid. Kind of just another one of those.
Yeah.
Hey, this is a giant threat because we're running a bunch of enchantments. The other thing, you mentioned hey, a lot of this is sorcery speed interaction. One thing I think I would do if I were playing Satyr Enchanter is play a few more instants that can interact. Stave off, finds Vastwood. Yeah, they're not going to draw you a card like every other card in your deck does, but they're going to stop other people from winning, and most importantly, keep Satyr alive. Because that was the big thing that makes all the difference in the world. If Satyr lives, you're golden. If Satyr dies and you have to recast Satyr at 5, like you're feeling really bad because then you're kind of like out of the game early, and it's going to take a lot because you just need a critical mass to get this deck going. Having your Satyr die the first time you cast it is really, really rough, I think.
Yeah, I have those cards. Stave Off and Vines of Fastwood especially. I put those in my notes. Banhart is running a Tameo Safekeeping, which I like, and a Whisper Silk Cloak, other ways to protect Satyr. I definitely think the deck could afford to run some more protection because, as you mentioned, Satyr himself is kind of a lightning rod. Everybody knows or will quickly find out if they don't know already that you're just going to out-card advantage everybody at the table if that stays in play.
Well,
Another thing. Go ahead, Gator.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there, David, but I think with that said, something that Bobby specifically spoke about earlier is he made the statement that Satyr kind of went unchecked, right? And I think that's kind of relevant because you play a lot of these casual games where you're just randomly on Discord and you'll hit up some friends and you'll play your Satyr deck, and it just like you said, it just gets axed right there in the beginning of the game. But I think it's pretty relevant in this event that Satyr did so well because it did kind of what Bobby said. It went unchecked. So it wasn't I think the word is most threatening, quotation marks there, even though it was threatening in my opinion, because it's still Satyr Enchanter at the end of the day, right? But it was still kind of went unchecked. So the fact that it was able to sit around, do its thing, I mean, I think that's kind of a big deal and kind of shows in this tournament setting, you're not going to be sitting in front of I don't know, a good commander to state, but I don't know, any colorless commander that's that's playable, right? But you're not going to be playing against things like that. You're playing against Abdels and Malcolms and Third Paths and things of that nature, right? So Satyr is just in the same level as all these others, right? So you're playing Satyr. Are they killing your Satyr or are they killing the opponent's Abdel, right? Or are they killing the what is most threatening on the table? There's a Zato sitting across from you. You killing the Satyr, you killing the Zato, right? Let's be realistic of what you're counterspelling or what you're killing in that sense. So
yeah, and that's in my game specifically, you're sitting at a table of 3 combo decks. It was Malcolm Dargo, Malcolm Breaches, and Abdel Candlekeep. Every single one of those other decks is trying to combo early and often, and so Satyr, they're all pointing everything at each other, and Satyr's just do. I'm gonna go over here, draw a card. Oh, oops! I guess I have a 16/16. I'm gonna kill you with, and then everyone's like, "Oh no! What did we let this get out of hand?" And yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I think a lot of these decks thrive on just not being the immediate, most imminent game-ending threat, obviously the card draw is insane and the advantage is absurd, but yeah, like you were saying, what are you gonna kill, this or the Reckless Fireweaver and Malcolm that are both sitting in play and waiting for one card to drop,
Yep, exactly. So how do you feel about that, David? Sorry about that. So.
Oh no, absolutely. No, I think that's definitely true. It's a deck that does, from my experience, wind up getting some wins that way. It's it's strong, but it doesn't have the potential to just wipe out the table like a combo deck does. And so you can allow them to draw some cards here and there. You can allow them to establish a board, and at some point, you've allowed them a little bit too much, and that's how they take it down. Yeah.
Well, what else you got for us on this deck, David? Are you good to go, or?
Yeah, the one other thing, and just very quickly, I haven't talked to Banhart about his list, so maybe he's come to a different conclusion from me. But I really love the Bogles in my version of the deck. Not only like the Aura Nautilid that Bobby mentioned, but Glade Cover Scout and Silhana Ledgewalker, 2 hexproof threats. They wear auras super well, and sometimes they can just run away with their game just all by themselves because no one can target them to get them off the table. Very good to put in all the glitters on, especially the Silhana Ledgewalker. It's just another card that I noticed was missing from here, and maybe there wasn't room when you're playing 56 enchantments. But
That's true.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, that's what I've got on this deck.
Yeah, I also notably this deck gets another one of those payoffs for just having a bunch of enchantments with the new set wilds with the slumbering keep guard. So it just keeps getting scarier. So
but with that, let's move on. Let's move on to the winner of the tournament. This is a great name to open with, the Mighty Ramses. So this individual was playing Third Path Iconoclast. And yeah, guys, this deck notably is a 1.75 with lands and 2.66 without lands average mana value. So this deck is a 67% blue deck and a 26% red deck. So I find that to be a bit notable because, I'm a big person where I look at the mana of a deck. It's one of the things that I'm a big fan of, and I'm really focused on I think decks succeed based on how you built its mana base. So, knowing it's just kind of splashing red and it's mostly just a blue deck, right? And it shows in the mana base. So for instance, they only have 5 mountains, but they have, their dual lands. So for instance, you have the Molten Tributary, right? So you have your dual lands and fetchable lands and things of that nature. So I'm a big fan of the mana base. It's very excellent. And Bobby, if you can help me with this here, this is the same individual that was with you in the last event that you had won with Gretchen. This is that same individual that top forward the last event.
Yeah, Ross was the TPI player who top forward the last one. I believe last time they were playing a more mid-rangey version that I don't believe had combos like this version. So notable difference there.
Got it. Yeah, so just like Bobby said, this is combo Third Path Iconoclast, which is which is not common for us. I will say the most recent combo variant that most of us has seen has been by Clay, which is on the Nat combo lines, which I do find that deck to be incredibly powerful. But this is a deck that specifically I've been playing a lot just in general. I've played a Flicker variant of my own accord, and mine does not compare to this one. Let's just get that out the way. So it's not even a good comparison. I just have reps with specifically Third Path on its own, right? But there are a lot of cards in this deck that I really appreciate, right? Specifically, I love the fact that they're playing Cleansing Wildfire. That was the weird card. As soon as I saw it in the deck list, I was like, oh, they're hating on Gretchen, right? Or maybe they're hating on Weavers. They're playing this, dedicating it to their own basic meta, which I found to be very relevant. How do you guys feel about that thought process?
Good card.
I mean, I like Cleansing Wildfire. I mean, it's a one of that, if you get it against Gretchen, it's great. Otherwise, it doesn't do a lot in other matchups, like maybe hit a bounce land here or there. But I mean, worst case, it draws a card, right? Like it's never doing anything. Maybe it ramps you if you have your bridge. So like there's some cute stuff you can do sometimes. But yeah, it's like low risk to include, with, average floor, but potentially really high ceiling. So yeah, I think it's a solid card.
Yeah. I mean, you can't. Oh, sorry, David. Go for it.
Oh, yeah. I was just gonna say, yeah. It's a 2-mana sorcery speed cycle. You can Faithless Looting away, and it's gonna make you a soldier off Third Path Iconoclast. It can only be so bad when you're making a 1/1 and you're drawing a card off of it. So
yeah. And notably, you can get it with Muddle, right? So there are certain situations where you could like tutor for the tutor to tutor for another, like the card itself, which is not too far fetched, especially when you're playing against Gretchen, right? So you're like actively going to be like, here, I'm going to Merchant Scroll for this card, then I'm going to use the Muddle for this, and then blow up your land because you're running away with the game with your Gretchen triggers.
Yeah, is Spirited Companion a good card?
I think so.
Yeah, this is Spirited Companion. Done.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed. But so these next two notable cards I find to be they go hand in hand, which is Rolling Thunder. So this card specifically goes hand in hand with, I think everybody knows what I'm going to say, Ashnod's Altar, right? You can't play one of these without the other one, especially since the simple fact that you're using all of these tokens to just pay and pay and pay and pay. And let's be realistic, that's a big Rolling Thunder. Like, you are just massacring the field with this card or ending the game specifically. So I like that about this deck, right? Like, these tokens are not just like a wall somebody's putting up. These tokens are there to be used for sack fodder, for blocking fodder, this deck goes so far in the tank, it's playing Energy Refractor. So, like, wow, this deck is like very just combo. And let me ask an opinion. Bobby, you did play against this deck. What are some of your thoughts when you saw this deck play out?
Yeah, so I played against Ross twice on the day. We talked about the previous one with the Rilsa, Rail, and Garna, and then obviously in the finals. Gonna be honest, the first time that Ashnod's Altar was cast, I was not expecting it, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a thing. And the Energy Fractor was in play, and I didn't think much of it when it got cast earlier in the game. Yeah, I mean, the deck is really good at just churning out tokens and drawing cards, and then just like having value that way, and then being able to pivot to a combo like line that just wins the game out of nowhere was very scary and kind of unexpected, in my opinion. I mean, maybe other people felt differently, but I'm not used to seeing the kind of flicker combo in these TPI lists, so it caught me off guard. Very strong. You talked about Ashnod's Altar. That card obviously does work. I think in the finals, Mana Geyser was what led to the, giant chunk of mana to start off the combo turn. So the deck is very good at making a giant chunk of mana after drawing, and just protecting itself early. One note about Ross, just watching him play throughout both this tournament and, a few times last tournament, he really prioritizes keeping his soldiers around and only using them on like a must-use basis. Because assuming this is, putting thoughts into his head, whether or not they're true, I don't know. But my thinking is, he knows he's going to need them for the altar line for, to just stave off death. So not just throwing them away. Some people are more aggressive with their tokens and like, I'm turning them sideways all the time. He does run a pack attack, so like he can do that if he needs to. But more often than not, he's sitting back on them, using them to dissuade attacks, and then, waiting for that Ashnod's Altar turn to just kind of go nuts. And Yeah, I mean the deck. He had clearly the best record on the day. I think he went 3-0-1 in the Swiss, and then obviously won the finals. Yeah, I mean the deck was very, very good.
Yeah, it has some very notable cards. You already kind of said one of them, like Pack Attack. I very much appreciate that card. Um, I love foil, by the way. I think this is one of the decks that should be playing foil. I think all TPI decks should be playing foil. The decks just draw cards. If you draw so many cards, why are you not playing foil, right? That gives you the ability to tap out, do your thing, and guess what? Hold up interaction. And with the way the format has kind of like become, if an opponent taps out, a lot of players become very comfortable with like, oh, you're tapped out, I'm just gonna go for it. And I've seen many players in the day now lose to a Thunderclap. Thunderclap just gets them every time. And in a deck like this, foil is just better, right? Like, you don't have to worry about a creature. Whatever you're going to try to do to win the game, the answer is no. Stopping you, that's it, done, call it a day. Here's another little weird little thing I thought about the deck. It's playing. So this is a weird one. So help me out here with this one, you guys. It's on High Tide. I don't really get why it's in the deck. Like, it's just like a High Tide line. I guess you could do it with like Drake lines and do like High Tide and Drake and stuff like that.
We're on
But
Cloud of
excluding that, it's
Fairies.
just
Yeah, it's running
So,
Cloud of Fairies.
Cloud of Fairies plus High Tide plus Flicker and an Archaeomancer, because you need the High Tide to actually make infinite mana there. Also, like you had said, look at the mana base. Like, we're on 17 islands. Plus
yeah.
our duels and our Mystic Sanctuary. We can support High Tide.
Agreed. I wasn't looking at it as a whole, like with cards like the Archaeomancer and stuff like that. It was just kind of like there's High Tide here.
Yeah, and it's also running the Snap
Like,
in the deck, so like you can do the Snap Archaeomancer High Tide lines. Yeah, I mean it's just like another like it can be just a ritual. It gives you a bunch of mana. It can enable a combo. Yeah, it's when you're drawing so many cards, like this deck draws so many cards. Like all the sorcery speed draw in this deck is just crazy.
Yeah.
And so, it's you're not running all the it doesn't run Dizzy Spell, I don't believe. So it has no way to find High Tide or search out High Tide except for maybe it has Merchant Scroll. But just see so many cards that it's gonna stumble into one of its mana generators, and then just from there, it's just gonna go.
Yeah, that was something that I had noted in my notes on the deck as well. It's just while there are interactive spells, a lot of it has turned into big card draw. Like there's Foresee, there's Big Score, there's Golden City, Shared Discovery, Thoughtcast. Those are ones that usually show up in TPI lists, but there's a lot of ways to dig for the combo pieces.
yeah, there's just so many. Like the deck is just like Bobby was saying. It just draws and it just draws and it just draws, and I think that's one of its greatest strengths, because it's not draw. So something I've seen in the past is that there are certain decks that just spin the wheel, right? That's a phrase I've said in the past, right? You spin the wheel, so you're drawing cards to draw cards, but what are you getting to, right? And with this deck, as we saw, and as of course they won the event, this deck was never drawing to draw. This deck was like, I'm drawing, oh look, there it is. You have now lost the game. And I found that to be very relevant because that exact play pattern happened to you, Bobby, in the finals, where it's just like, what you guys doing? Oh, Abdel did that? Win the game? I was like, Whoa.
All I'm saying is that's exactly what I was saying in the tier list when we were talking about TPI, and you were like, nah, you shouldn't play combos in TPI. But here we are.
You know what? You're right, but like, I just, I come on, cut
I
me
had
some
to call
slack.
him out on it.
I like it. I like it as a control deck, bro. And we've historically seen it as a control deck. So like, there are certain things that I kind of don't really agree with in this deck, but let's be realistic. They won. So what the hell do I know, right? And they had the best record all day. So yeah, send it.
The combo
Like,
players will rise.
yeah. I mean, that's one note is with literally exactly what you just said. The combo players will rise. This was another event won by a combo deck. So out of I don't know how many events we've had at this point, but we've had one aggro deck and only combo decks, right? So what is it, 7? Some absurd amount at this point, and just one lonely aggro deck has won an event at this point. So these, I mean, combo's here to stay, right? Like, what else needs to be said?
You're preaching to the choir over here. I don't think Puzzle and I are going to be disagreeing with you anytime soon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it shows. I mean, proof is in the pudding, right? And this deck is strong. Like, Ardent Elementalist and Archaeomancer. It, I think me and you have said this, I don't know how many times at this point, Puzzle. Is like one of, if not the strongest color schemes in the format, right? Like, it's bonkers. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you guys have any thoughts about this list?
I think the only other thing I want to point out, I'm curious to, and I would maybe next time if I were to ever run into Russ, pick his brain on his exact decision for like the pingers he ran. Because there's,
I have
Gutter
that
Snipe.
note as well.
Yeah, Gutter Snipe is obviously the best and just chunks people's life souls so quickly. But it's only around on Gutter Snipe, Kessig Flame Breather, and Reckless Fireweaver. No, it has Tandem Lookout, but no Ophidian Eye. Just like an interesting mix of all like the kind of curiosity control package. Curious, how much thought went into like, okay, I want this but not this, or I mean the deck wants. I'm sure finding slots is not easy in any deck, especially this one. But curious, if maybe a few more pingers can make its way in there in the future. The Ophidian Eye. That was just like an intriguing thing.
Not me and Bobby
thought-
pushing people to play more Curious Control.
So let me ask you a question, Bobby, because I actually don't know this about the event as a whole. Were proxies allowed?
Yeah.
They were? Okay. Something about I've experienced in the past, which a lot of players aren't too familiar with this, but I'm just an old player, so I've experienced this quite a bit. Even if you're missing a brainstorm, right, for your deck, you'll just proxy, or you'll just, your buddy will hand you a random card, and you'll just play that instead. And I've experienced that, for years at this point. And there could be possibilities that certain players just like, oh, I don't have, an Ophidian Eye, so I'm going to put this other card in its place, right? And there is potential for that because not all people like to proxy things. I am one of those people. I will literally put some random card in my deck over putting a proxy in my deck because my deck's like all real, even if the card is like a nickel and I just don't have it. Doesn't matter price point, I'm doing it anyways. So I think there may be a little bit of validity with that thought process. Could be completely wrong, way off in left field, but there's potential.
Yeah, who knows? That's why, curious if there were any thoughts that went into it or if it was just as simple as that, who knows?
Sure.
Yeah. But,
yeah.
I mean, with that, guys, anybody else have anything about this deck? I mean, I have congrats I mean, good job, man. You won. TPI. You know, been talking about TPI for a long time now, so.
Congrats to everyone we brought up today. But yeah, any closing thoughts from you, Bobby or David?
I thought the event was awesome. Shout out to Dallas Walker at Gilded Adonis on Twitter. Every Riches to Rags event has just been run. I mean, one, it's just awesome getting a chance to play in paper. So that is awesome. Events were, run very well. It was, I think it was fun getting the chance to play with the common backgrounds. Dallas hasn't said one way or another, I don't believe, the plan for future tournaments. So I'm interested to see how that shakes out based on what happened at this tournament. Granted, there weren't many people taking advantage of it like we talked about, but curious how they feel about that. And just, very excited to, get more opportunities to play some tournaments in this format. It's awesome. So
I was also very grateful that they had coverage of the event as well. Just, being able to, I couldn't make it out there, unfortunately, but being able to watch the event live and chat with people on YouTube as it was happening. Dallas was also in chat, giving us peeks at people's hands and stuff as well as the game was going on. So we got a little bit of the text coverage side of it too. It was great. I love watching events when I can't play in them, and being able to experience that was excellent.
Yeah, definitely agree. But I didn't get to do this last time, so I'm very excited to do this little tidbit here. But Bobby, thank you so much for being on here with us, and David, you as well. I really appreciate you guys here with us this evening, and yeah, I'm excited to do this. I didn't get to do this last time. Okay, don't pay attention to how happy I am. All right, my man Puzzle, take us away.
All right. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe down below if you aren't already. I can go ahead and put links in the description to all the deck lists, or the standings at least, so you guys can all go find the deck lists yourself. And we'll also have a link to our Patreon in the description from now on, so you can feel free to check that out if you want to support us over there. And thank you so much, and we'll see you all next time.